It was a bright, sunny morning off the coast of Hawaii when marine biologist Sarah Chen boarded her research vessel, the Ocean Explorer. The gentle waves lapped against the boat's hull as she prepared for what seemed like another routine day of whale observation. Sarah had been studying humpback whales for over a decade, but nothing could have prepared her for what she would encounter that day. The research team had set out early, just as the sun was painting the horizon in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Sarah stood at the bow of the vessel, her experienced eyes scanning the waters for the familiar signs of whale activity. Her dark hair whipped around her face in the salty breeze as she adjusted her binoculars. "Movement at 2 o'clock," called out Mike, one of the junior researchers. Sarah quickly turned her attention to where he was pointing. Through her binoculars, she could see the distinctive spray of a whale's blowhole, but something was different about this one. The spray seemed weaker than usual, and as Sarah watched more closely, she noticed the whale's movements were sluggish and irregular. In all her years of research, she had never seen a humpback whale moving so slowly. Her scientific instincts told her something was terribly wrong. "Tom, can you bring us closer?" Sarah called to the boat's captain, "But maintain a safe distance. I want to get a better look at this one." As they approached, the team fell silent. The whale, which they could now see was a female, was barely breaking the surface to breathe. Her movements were labored, nothing like the graceful giants Sarah was used to observing. Through the crystal-clear Hawaiian waters, they could see dark patches covering large portions of the whale's body. Sarah quickly grabbed her underwater camera and specialized equipment for taking water samples. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared everything, not from fear, but from the rush of adrenaline that came with knowing they had stumbled upon something unprecedented. "This isn't normal," she muttered, more to herself than to her team. "Those dark patches, they're moving." Using their boat's sophisticated underwater viewing system, they were able to get a closer look at the whale's condition. What they saw made even the most experienced members of the team gasp. The whale's massive body was literally covered in parasites, thousands upon thousands of them, creating a horrifying living blanket that was slowly killing this magnificent creature. "I'd never seen an infestation this severe," Sarah said, her voice tight with concern. She quickly began documenting everything, taking photographs and notes while her team collected water samples and recorded the whale's movements. The female whale seemed to sense their presence, and in a moment that Sarah would never forget, the massive creature turned slightly, revealing her eye. There was something in that eye, a look of pain, of desperation, that touched Sarah's soul. It was as if the whale was asking for help. "We need to do something," Sarah announced to her team. "This isn't just about research anymore. If we don't help her, she's going to die." The team spent the next several hours observing the whale, whom they named Luna, after the crescent-shaped marking near her tail. They documented her breathing rate, her swimming patterns, and the extent of the parasite infestation. Sarah knew that what they were witnessing was both tragic and unique, a chance to potentially save a whale in a way that had never been done before. As the sun began to set, Sarah made dozens of phone calls from the boat, reaching out to every marine wildlife expert and veterinarian she knew. She knew that helping Luna would require something extraordinary, something that had never been attempted before. "We'll be back tomorrow," Sarah promised, watching as Luna's massive form disappeared beneath the waves. "We're going to find a way to help you." That evening, as Sarah sat in her office at the Marine Research Center, surrounded by the day's photographs and data, she couldn't shake the image of Luna's eye from her mind. She knew that the next few days would be crucial in determining whether this magnificent creature would live or die. Little did Sarah know that what would unfold over the next few days would not only change her life, but would also revolutionize how marine biologists approached whale rescue operations. The story of Luna was just beginning, and it would soon capture the attention of people around the world. The next morning dawned with a sense of urgency as Sarah and her team returned to the location where they had last seen Luna. The weather had changed overnight, with gray clouds hanging low over the ocean, matching the team's somber mood. They found the whale exactly where they had left her, moving even more slowly than the day before. Sarah had assembled a larger team for today's observation, including Dr. Maria Torres, a leading expert in marine parasitology who had flown in overnight from California after hearing about Luna's condition. As they approached in the boat, Dr. Torres immediately began setting up her specialized underwater camera equipment. "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with," Dr. Torres explained, her eyes fixed on her monitor screen. These aren't just regular whale lice or barnacles. This is something I've never seen before in such numbers. The team launched their underwater drones, equipped with high-definition cameras, to get a closer look at Luna's condition. What they discovered was worse than anyone had imagined. The parasites weren't just on the surface of her skin. They had created deep wounds in several places, particularly around her blowholes and fins. "Look at this," Sarah pointed to one of the monitor screens, her voice tight with concern. "They're actually preventing her from moving her fins properly. It's like she's swimming with weights attached to her body." Dr. Torres nodded grimly as she studied the footage. These parasites are literally eating away at her. The weight alone must be exhausting her, but the damage to her skin is what really concerns me. Those wounds could become severely infected if we don't act quickly. Through their calculations, the team estimated that Luna was carrying an extra 1,000 pounds of parasites. The creatures had formed thick clusters, particularly around her head and tail flukes. Each time she moved, it was clear she was fighting against their weight and the pain they caused. The team also noticed something else disturbing. Luna wasn't feeding properly. Humpback whales typically feed by taking in huge mouthfuls of water and filtering out small fish and krill, but Luna's movements were so restricted that she could barely perform this essential function. "She's starving," Sarah realized, watching as Luna made a weak attempt to feed. Between the energy she's using to fight these parasites and her inability to feed properly, she's getting weaker by the hour. They spent the afternoon documenting every aspect of Luna's condition. The underwater footage revealed the true horror of her situation. Thousands of parasites, some as large as dinner plates, had attached themselves to her body. In some areas, they were layered 3 or 4 deep. Sarah's phone hadn't stopped ringing all day as news of Luna's condition spread through the marine biology community. Some experts suggested euthanasia might be the most humane option, but Sarah refused to give up. She knew there had to be a way to help. Late in the afternoon, they received an unexpected call from James Rodriguez, a marine veterinarian known for his unconventional but effective treatment methods. He had been watching the footage they'd been sending out to experts throughout the day. "I might have a solution," he said over the speakerphone, his voice crackling with static, "but it's never been attempted before. Not on this scale." As James explained his idea, the team listened with a mixture of hope and skepticism. His plan was dangerous, possibly even crazy, but it might be Luna's only chance for survival. "The parasites need to be removed manually," he explained. "We'll need a team of specialized divers working in shifts. It's risky, but if we don't try, she's going to die anyway." Sarah looked at her team's faces, then out at Luna, who had surfaced again to breathe. The whale's eye met hers once more, and in that moment, she knew they had to try James's plan, no matter how dangerous it might be. "How soon can you get here?" Sarah asked James. "I'll be on the next flight to Hawaii," he replied. "Start gathering the equipment we'll need. We don't have much time." As the sun set on their second day with Luna, the team began making preparations for what would be one of the most daring marine animal rescue attempts in history. They knew the next few days would push them to their limits, but the sight of Luna's suffering had united them in their determination to save her. None of them slept much that night, their minds filled with both hope and fear about what the next day would bring. The real challenge was just beginning. When James Rodriguez arrived at Honolulu International Airport at dawn the next day, Sarah was already waiting for him. Dark circles under her eyes revealed she hadn't slept, having spent the night gathering equipment and securing emergency permits for the rescue operation. "How's our patient?" James asked as they rushed to the harbor, his gear bags loaded in the back of Sarah's truck. "Getting weaker," Sarah replied, her hands tight on the steering wheel. "We monitored her all night. Her breathing rate has slowed significantly." At the harbor, they found the team already loading specialized equipment onto the Ocean Explorer. James had brought custom-designed tools he'd modified specifically for this operation, long-handled scrapers with rounded edges that would remove parasites without harming the whale's sensitive skin. These are the latest satellite tracking reports. Dr. Torres showed them on her tablet. "Luna hasn't moved more than half a mile since yesterday. She's conserving what little energy she has left." James assembled the dive team for a briefing. They had gathered 6 of the most experienced marine animal rescue divers from across Hawaii, each with years of experience working with large marine mammals. Even so, What they were about to attempt was unprecedented. Remember? James emphasized, pointing to diagrams of Luna's infected areas. We're dealing with a wounded, possibly frightened animal that weighs 40 tons. One small movement from her could be fatal for any of us. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time. No one moved. The morning sun was beating down as they approached Luna's location. Through the clear water, they could see her massive form, moving even more slowly than the day before. The parasites were clearly visible, their dark masses contrasting against her lighter skin. Her breathing rate is down to 2 minutes between surfacing, Sarah reported, checking her instruments. Normal is every 10 to 15 minutes. She's struggling to stay alive. James suited up first, along with 2 other divers. They would work in rotating teams of 3, with each shift lasting no more than 30 minutes due to the physically demanding nature of the work. Remember the signals, James said through his diving mask. If she shows any signs of distress, we abort immediately. The first team entered the water slowly, careful not to startle Luna. James led the approach, his movements calm and deliberate. Everyone on the boat held their breath as he got closer to the massive whale. Luna's eye turned to watch them, but she didn't move away. If anything, she seemed to slow her movement even more, as if understanding they were trying to help. She's accepting our presence. James's voice crackled through the radio, beginning removal of parasites near the left flipper. For the next 4 hours, the teams worked in rotation. The parasites were deeply embedded, requiring careful effort to remove them without causing additional harm. Each team brought up buckets full of the creatures, which Dr. Torres quickly preserved for later study. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion was setting in, but they had only cleared about a quarter of Luna's body. The sun was relentless, and the physical demands of working underwater while maintaining precise control were taking their toll on even the most experienced divers. "We need to stop for today," Sarah finally announced, seeing the fatigue in her team. "We're all getting too tired. It's becoming dangerous." James surfaced from his 3rd dive, pulling off his mask with shaking hands. "She's still hanging in there," he reported. "But we've got to finish this tomorrow. She doesn't have much time left." They marked their progress with underwater markers and took detailed photographs to plan the next day's approach. Luna watched them as they prepared to leave, her eye following their movements. "Hold on, girl," Sarah whispered as they pulled away. "Just one more day." Back at the research center that evening, the team reviewed their footage and planned for the next day. The removed parasites had already revealed surprising information. They were a hybrid species that Dr. Torres had never seen before. This could explain the severity of the infestation, she explained, examining samples under her microscope. They're more aggressive than typical whale lice, and they're reproducing at an alarming rate. As the team finally headed home for some much-needed rest, Sarah stayed behind, studying the day's data. Luna's vital signs were still declining, but more slowly now. The removal of even some of the parasites seemed to be helping. "Tomorrow," she promised herself, looking at the latest satellite tracking showing Luna's position. "Tomorrow we finish this." None of them knew that the most challenging part of the rescue was still to come. Dawn broke with ominous dark clouds gathering on the horizon. The weather forecast had warned of an approaching storm system, adding a new layer of urgency to their rescue mission. James and the team loaded their equipment onto the Ocean Explorer with practiced efficiency, knowing they were racing against both time and weather. "We got maybe 6 hours before the storm hits," Captain Tom announced, studying the radar. "After that, the waters will be too rough for diving." When they reached Luna's location, they found her condition had deteriorated overnight. She was barely moving now, her massive body listing slightly to one side. The areas they had cleared yesterday showed signs of healing, but the remaining parasites seemed to have multiplied, as if sensing their host was weakening. "Her body temperature is dropping," Sarah reported, checking the thermal imaging equipment. "She's using the last of her energy reserves." James gathered the dive team for a final briefing. "Today we go all in," he said, his face serious. "We need to clear at least 80% of the parasites for her to have a fighting chance. Safety is still priority 1, but we need to work faster." They decided to deploy all 3 diving teams simultaneously, each taking a different section of Luna's massive body. It was risky having so many divers around her at once, but they had no choice. As the first teams entered the water, the wind began to pick up. Waves slapped against the boat's hull with increasing force, Above them, thunder rumbled in the distance. First team, starting on the head region, James radioed from below. She's very still, almost too still. For the next 2 hours, they worked with desperate intensity. Buckets of parasites were hauled up to the boat, where Dr. Torres and her assistants quickly processed them. The water around Luna began to cloud with debris from the removal process. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder shook the air. Luna flinched, her massive tail moving in an involuntary reaction. One of the divers barely managed to swim clear in time. "Everyone okay?" Sarah called through the radio, her heart pounding. "We're good," came James's reply, "but she's getting agitated. The storm's affecting her." The wind was now strong enough to rock the boat significantly. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, making it difficult to maintain visual contact with the divers. Captain Tom struggled to keep the vessel in position. "We've got maybe an hour before I have to call it," he warned. "These waves are getting dangerous." Below the surface, James and his team worked with renewed urgency. They had cleared about 60% of Luna's body, but the most heavily infested areas remained. The parasites here were deeply embedded, requiring more time and effort to remove safely. Then, something unexpected happened. Despite her weakened state, Luna began to move, not away from them, but in a way that seemed deliberately helpful. She slowly rolled to one side, exposing an area they hadn't been able to reach. "She's helping us," James said in amazement. "She knows we're trying to save her." The storm intensified, but Luna's cooperation allowed them to work faster. Lightning flashed overhead, and the thunder was now constant. The boat rocked violently in the growing swells. "Last warning," Captain Tom called. 10 minutes before we have to pull out." In those final minutes, the team worked with desperate speed. James directed his divers to focus on the most critical areas, around Luna's blowholes and the deep wounds where infection was most likely to set in. "Time's up," Captain Tom shouted as a massive wave crashed over the boat's bow. "Everyone out of the water now." The divers surfaced one by one, fighting against the waves. James was the last to come up, his face showing both exhaustion and concern. They had managed to clear about 75% of the parasites. Not quite their goal, but perhaps enough to give Luna a chance. As they prepared to leave, Luna surfaced beside the boat. Despite the storm, despite her weakness, she raised her massive head above the water. Her eye, now clear of parasites, seemed to meet each of theirs in turn. "Did we do enough?" Sarah asked James as they watched Luna disappear beneath the churning waves. "We'll know tomorrow," he replied, stripping off his diving gear. "If she makes it through the night, she has a chance." The journey back to harbor was treacherous, with waves crashing over the bow and wind howling around them. But everyone's thoughts were with Luna, left alone to face the storm in her weakened state. That night, as the storm raged outside, the team huddled in the research center, monitoring Luna's tracking signal. Each blip on the screen was a reminder that she was still alive, still fighting. Now all they could do was wait and hope their efforts had been enough. The storm raged through the night, battering the Hawaiian coast with fierce winds and heavy rain. Sarah hadn't left the research center, her eyes fixed on the tracking monitor that showed Luna's position. Every time the signal pulsed, indicating movement, the entire team breathed a collective sigh of relief. As first light broke the next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind calm seas and clear skies. The team gathered at the harbor earlier than usual, each person showing signs of their sleepless night, but driven by the need to know if Luna had survived. "Signal shows she's moved about 2 miles north," Sarah announced as they loaded the boat. "That's more movement than we've seen in days." The ocean was still choppy from the previous night's storm as they made their way to Luna's location. Marine debris floated on the surface, and visibility wasn't ideal. Everyone scanned the waters anxiously for any sign of their whale. "There," Mike shouted suddenly, pointing to a splash in the distance. "Something big just breached." They approached carefully, not daring to hope too much. Then, to everyone's amazement, they saw Luna break the surface in a way they hadn't seen before, with energy. She was moving more freely, her movements showing a strength that had been absent during their previous encounters. James quickly suited up for a preliminary dive to assess her condition. The water visibility was poor from the storm, but as he approached Luna, what he saw made him smile behind his diving mask. "You're not going to believe this," his voice crackled through the radio. "The storm. It actually helped. The rough waters seemed to have dislodged many of the remaining parasites. And the areas we cleared? They're already showing signs of healing. Sarah and Dr. Torres exchanged excited looks. The storm, which they had feared might harm Luna in her weakened state, had actually assisted in her recovery. Nature, it seemed, had provided its own helping hand. As the morning progressed, they observed Luna's behavior with growing optimism. She was diving for longer periods, moving with increasing confidence, and even attempting to feed. The team documented everything, taking photographs and video of her remarkable recovery. "Look at her skin," Dr. Torres pointed out during one of Luna's close passes to the boat. "The areas we cleared are already beginning to regenerate. Her natural healing ability is incredible." But the most dramatic moment came just before noon. Luna suddenly disappeared from view, diving deep. The team waited, watching the surface, when suddenly, in a display of strength that left them speechless, she breached completely out of the water. Her massive body, now largely free of parasites, gleamed in the sunlight as she crashed back into the sea, sending spray high into the air. "She's showing off," James laughed, wiping spray from his face. "I think someone's feeling better." They spent the rest of the day monitoring Luna's behavior and documenting her recovery. The transformation from the dying whale they found just days ago was remarkable. While some parasites remained in hard-to-reach areas, they were far fewer in number and would likely fall off naturally as she regained her strength. Sarah worked on her preliminary report, knowing this case would be significant for marine biology. The success of this rescue could change how we approach similar cases in the future, she explained to her team. "We've proven that direct intervention, while risky, can work." As the afternoon wore on, Luna began to move further out to sea, her movements becoming more like those of a healthy humpback whale. The team followed at a respectful distance, celebrating each sign of her recovery. "Should we attach a satellite tag?" one of the researchers suggested. "To track her progress?" James shook his head. "She's been through enough. Let's let her be wild again. She knows where to find food, where to go. She just needed a little help getting her strength back." They watched as Luna made one final pass by their boat. This time, she rolled slightly to her side, her newly cleared eye visible above the water. It was no longer filled with pain and desperation, but seemed to shine with renewed life. "Good luck, girl," Sarah whispered as Luna finally turned and swam toward the open ocean, her movements strong and purposeful. The team began their journey back to harbor, tired but elated. They had not only saved Luna's life, but had also proven that sometimes the riskiest plans, combined with a little help from nature itself, could lead to the most extraordinary outcomes. What they didn't know was that Luna's story was far from over, and her recovery would lead to discoveries that would change their understanding of marine mammal rehabilitation forever. 2 weeks had passed since Luna's dramatic rescue, and Sarah's research center had become a hub of intense scientific activity. Dr. Torres had been working around the clock, studying the parasites they'd removed from Luna, and what she discovered was sending shockwaves through the marine biology community. "These aren't just ordinary whale lice," she explained during an emergency meeting with the team. "We're dealing with an entirely new species." She pointed to the microscope images displayed on the laboratory's main screen, showing the parasite's unique characteristics. The discovery sparked immediate concern. If this new species was as aggressive as they'd seen with Luna, other whales could be at risk. Sarah spent hours coordinating with whale-watching groups and research vessels across the Pacific, setting up an early warning system to identify similar cases. Meanwhile, James had been compiling detailed documentation of their rescue technique. "We need to be ready if this happens again," he insisted, reviewing footage from their dives. "Every moment of Luna's rescue taught us something valuable." Their work was interrupted one morning by an excited call from a whale-watching boat about 30 miles offshore. "You need to see this," the captain said, his voice crackling with static. "I think we found your whale, but she's not alone." The team quickly loaded their gear and headed out. The sea was calm that day, making it easy to spot the group of humpback whales the captain had reported. As they approached, Sarah's hands trembled as she raised her binoculars. "It's her," she confirmed, recognizing Luna's distinctive markings. But what they saw next left them speechless. Luna was swimming alongside 3 other whales, all showing signs of the same parasite infestation she had suffered. But instead of avoiding the affected whales, Luna appeared to be actively helping them. They watched in amazement as she repeatedly dove beneath the struggling whales, using her body to scrape against theirs, effectively removing clusters of parasites. "She's teaching them," James exclaimed, frantically filming the behavior. "She's showing them how to help themselves." Dr. Torres quickly collected samples of the floating parasites. "This is unprecedented," she said, carefully preserving the specimens. "We've never documented this kind of learned behavior in humpback whales before." The team spent the entire day observing and documenting Luna's interactions with the other whales. She seemed to have taken on the role of a healer, using her experience to assist others suffering from the same condition she had overcome. "Look at how methodical she is," Sarah noted, watching Luna guide a particularly affected whale to rub against a coral formation. "She's not just randomly helping, she's showing them specific techniques." As they continued to observe, more whales began to join the group. By late afternoon, they had counted 7 whales, all participating in what looked like a coordinated grooming session. Luna moved between them, seemingly directing their movements. James, who had been analyzing the footage, made another interesting observation. "The parasites seem less aggressive on these whales," he pointed out. "It's as if Luna's experience somehow triggered an adaptation in their immune responses." Dr. Torres quickly confirmed his theory through her preliminary analysis. "The whales that have been in contact with Luna show higher levels of certain antibodies," she explained. "She's not just teaching them, she's actually helping them build resistance." As the sun began to set, they watched Luna lead her group of whales toward deeper waters. Before disappearing, she breached one final time, her body now completely healed and gleaming in the golden light. "She's become more than a survivor," Sarah said softly, making final notes in her journal. "She's become a teacher." Back at the research center that evening, the team worked late into the night, documenting everything they'd witnessed. Their original rescue of Luna had evolved into something far more significant, a breakthrough in understanding whale behavior and their capacity for social learning. "We need to publish this immediately," Dr. Torres insisted, organizing their findings. "This could change everything we know about whale social structures and their ability to adapt to new threats." As Sarah finally headed home that night, she couldn't help but smile at how their emergency rescue had transformed into a groundbreaking scientific discovery. Luna had not only survived, she had become a pioneer, teaching others to survive as well. Little did they know that Luna's story would continue to unfold in even more remarkable ways, leading to discoveries that would revolutionize their understanding of marine mammal intelligence and social behavior. 6 months after Luna's remarkable rescue, Sarah found herself standing before a packed auditorium at the International Marine Biology Conference in Sydney, Australia. Behind her, a giant screen displayed spectacular underwater footage of Luna leading her growing pod of rehabilitated whales. The presentation included stunning footage from their ongoing observations. Luna had developed increasingly sophisticated methods of helping other whales. She would guide them to specific coral formations that were most effective for scraping off parasites, and even appeared to coordinate group efforts where whales would help clean each other. During the question and answer session, a marine biologist from Japan shared similar observations from their waters. "We spotted whales exhibiting the same behavior off the coast of Okinawa," he reported. "The technique is spreading across the Pacific." Back in Hawaii, Dr. Torres had made another breakthrough. A research team had identified why Luna's pod showed such strong resistance to new parasite infections. "They're producing a unique antibody," she explained over video conference. More remarkably, they seemed to be teaching their calves this immune response. The media attention was overwhelming. Documentary crews from National Geographic, BBC, and other major networks arrived to film Luna and her pod. The footage of whales actively helping each other captured the public's imagination, challenging long-held assumptions about cetacean intelligence and social learning. James, who had been tracking Luna's movements via satellite, noticed an interesting pattern. "She's not just staying in one area," he pointed out during a team meeting. "She's actively seeking out other infected whales. It's like she's on a mission." One particularly memorable encounter occurred when they found Luna introducing 2 newly recovered whales to her pod. The integration process was fascinating to watch. The pod welcomed the newcomers with what appeared to be a celebration, breaching, tail slapping, and creating bubble curtains in coordinated patterns. She's created more than just a pod, Sarah noted in her research journal. She's established a community of survivors who now help others survive. The scientific implications were enormous. Luna's behavior had sparked new research into whale intelligence, social structures, and their capacity for empathy. Universities worldwide began dedicating resources to studying what they called the Luna effect, the phenomenon of animals teaching learned survival strategies to others of their species. One morning, while observing the pod, they witnessed something extraordinary. A young whale calf, born to one of Luna's first rescued companions, was seen teaching the scraping technique to another whale. This was the first documented case of the behavior being passed down to a new generation. "This isn't just learned behavior anymore," Dr. Torres exclaimed when she saw the footage. "It's becoming cultural transmission. They're creating their own healing tradition." Conservation groups seized upon Luna's story to push for stronger marine protection measures. The discovery of the new parasite species had highlighted the need for better monitoring of marine ecosystem changes, and several countries began implementing new regulations to protect whale populations. Sarah's research center became a global hub for marine mammal rehabilitation studies. Scientists from around the world came to learn from their experience with Luna, hoping to apply similar approaches in their own waters. As Sarah completed her latest research paper one evening, she received an urgent call from a whale-watching boat. They had spotted Luna's pod engaged in something never seen before. They were working together to help a completely different species, a young gray whale that had been suffering from a similar parasite infection. "She's breaking the barriers between species," James said in awe as they rushed to document this new development. "She's teaching not just her own kind, but showing others that help can come from unexpected places." The sun was setting as they watched Luna and her pod guide the young gray whale through their healing ritual. The sight of these massive creatures working together, helping one across species boundaries, was a powerful reminder of nature's capacity for adaptation and cooperation. As their boat headed back to harbor that evening, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come from that desperate first encounter with a dying whale. Luna had not only survived, she had become a symbol of hope and resilience, teaching humans and whales alike that sometimes the greatest strength lies in helping others. But even then, nobody could have predicted what would happen next, as Luna's story was about to take its most surprising turn yet. 1 year to the date after Luna's rescue, Sarah stood at the bow of the Ocean Explorer, surrounded by a fleet of research vessels from around the world. Scientists from 12 different countries had gathered to witness what had become known as the Great Migration. Luna's pod, now nearly 50 whales strong, was about to begin their first coordinated seasonal journey. The morning air was crisp, and the sea was unusually calm. Through their tracking systems, they could see Luna's pod gathering in the deeper waters offshore. What happened next left even the most experienced researchers speechless. Luna emerged first, reaching high into the air as if announcing the beginning of something extraordinary. Behind her, in a formation never before documented, her entire pod surfaced in synchronized patterns. They weren't just traveling together, they were organizing other whale pods they encountered along their migration route. "It's like watching a mobile healing center," James remarked, filming the unprecedented behavior. "They're creating safe passages for vulnerable whales." Dr. Torres's latest research had revealed something remarkable. The antibodies developed by Luna's pod were now being found in whale populations across the Pacific. Somehow, through their interactions, they were passing on their immunity to others. "The parasites are disappearing," Dr. Torres announced during an impromptu meeting on deck. "Luna's pod isn't just treating the problem, they're helping create a lasting solution." As they followed the migration, they witnessed scenes that defied their understanding of whale behavior. Luna's pod would split into smaller groups, each led by experienced members, to assist struggling whales they encountered. They had developed a complex system of communication, using songs and physical gestures to teach their healing techniques. The most touching moment came when they spotted Luna with a new calf of her own. The young whale, already displaying its mother's helpful nature, was seen mimicking Luna's healing behaviors with other calves. "She's not just passed on her knowledge," Sarah noted in her final research paper, "she's created a new generation of healers." International marine protection agencies took notice. Luna's story had led to the establishment of new marine sanctuaries and stricter regulations on ocean pollution. The discovery of the parasites had sparked a global initiative to monitor marine ecosystem health. As the migration continued, something unprecedented occurred. Other species of marine mammals, dolphins, smaller whales, even sea lions, began following Luna's pod, creating what locals called the Great Healing Journey. The pod would pause periodically, allowing these different species to benefit from their presence and knowledge. "She's changed everything we thought we knew about marine mammals," James said, watching Luna guide a young humpback through their now famous cleaning ritual. "She's shown us that they're capable of so much more than we imagined." The scientific papers documenting Luna's story have become the most cited marine biology research of the decade. Universities created new programs focusing on marine mammal social behavior and intelligence. The term Luna effect became synonymous with animals teaching survival skills across species barriers. On the final day of their observation, as the pod prepared to continue their migration to cooler waters, Luna gave them one last extraordinary display. She led her entire pod in what appeared to be a farewell ceremony, breaching, singing, and creating massive bubble circles in perfect synchronization. "She's saying goodbye," Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. "She knows her work here is done." As the sun set on that final day, they watched Luna lead her pod toward the horizon. The once dying whale had not only survived but had transformed the very nature of marine conservation. She had taught them that sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting alone, but from sharing the knowledge of survival with others. Sarah's final entry in her research journal read, "Luna's legacy isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. She showed us that even in our vast oceans, no creature has to face its battles alone. She taught us that healing isn't just about getting better. It's about helping others get better too." The story of Luna, the whale who became a healer, would be told for generations to come. She had shown the world that sometimes the most powerful force in nature isn't survival of the fittest, but the strength found in helping others survive. As the research vessels turned toward home, the sound of whale song echoed across the waves, Luna's final gift, a reminder that in the vast ocean of life, we are all connected, and one act of helping can create ripples that change the world.